You're kneeling in the dirt, pulling weeds away from a scraggly patch of wild grass. Thin stalks, tiny seeds, nothing special to look at. You do this every day, for hours, because if you don't, the grass dies and you starve. You've been told this is the moment humans figured out farming. You domesticated wheat. It's not that simple. It might be the other way around. 10,000 years ago, that grass covered a few hillsides in what's now the Middle East. Today it covers more farmland than any other crop on the planet, on every continent humans have ever settled. No wild plant in the history of biology has ever copied its own DNA that successfully. And it didn't do it by getting stronger, or faster, or smarter. It did it by getting one particular primate to work for it, every day, for the rest of that primate's life. Historian Yuval Noah Harari calls this one of history's biggest cons. You were taught the agricultural revolution was humanity's great leap forward. Here's the catch, though. Looked at from an evolutionary ecology angle, it's the moment a grass turned you into unpaid labor. So here's the question this video is built around. If you zoom in on one human life, not the species as a whole, who actually won this deal? Before going further, a myth worth correcting. The story most people know says agriculture happened because farming is easier than hunting, that early humans stumbled onto wheat and thought, finally, an easier way to eat. The archaeological record says the opposite. Studies comparing time and calorie budgets show hunter-gatherers typically worked fewer hours a week for a more varied, more nutritious diet than early farmers ever managed. Farming didn't win because it was easier on any one person. It won because it could feed more mouths per acre, even while making each individual mouth work harder for worse food. Quantity beat quality. And quantity is exactly what a grass evolving to spread its own genes cares about. Reason one wheat came out ahead: your body was never built for this job. The human skeleton spent millions of years evolving to climb, run, throw a spear, not to bend at the waist and pull weeds for 8 hours a day. Bioarchaeologist Thea Mollison, digging through skeletons at the Abu Huraira site in Syria, found permanently deformed toes, worn-down knees, twisted spines, all matching the exact kneeling position used to grind wheat by hand for hours on end. That's not old age showing up in the bones. That's a repetitive strain injury from history's first job. Reason 2, you got shorter. Anthropologist J. Lawrence Angel compared hunter-gatherer skeletons to early farmer skeletons across the eastern Mediterranean and found average height dropped noticeably within just a few generations of switching to farming. A diet that used to span dozens of nuts, fruits, meats, and fish collapsed down to mostly wheat starch. Less protein, fewer micronutrients, and even a fully grown adult simply didn't reach the height their ancestors did. Reason 3, and this is the one that flips the whole deal into wheat's favor for good: your population exploded. Demographer Jean-Pierre Bocquet-Appel calls this the Neolithic demographic transition. His data shows the average number of children per woman jumped sharply once humans settled down because giving birth close together in time got a lot easier without constant walking. For wheat, that's an outright win. More people means more hands tending it. For any one person living through it, more children on the same exhausted patch of soil just meant more mouths and less food. Here's the part almost nobody puts in this story, and it's the most speculative claim in the whole video, so it's worth being upfront about it. Some researchers argue wheat may have shaped which humans survived to reproduce at all, not just how they lived day to day. The idea is that people whose bodies happen to tolerate a starch-heavy, low-diversity diet slightly better had an edge in these new farming settlements, while people who didn't had worse health outcomes and fewer surviving children. That's a hypothesis, still debated among geneticists and archaeologists, not a settled mechanism. But if there's even a shred of truth to it, wheat didn't just change how you lived. It may have quietly decided which version of you got to exist in the first place. Here's the pivot the whole theory hinges on. In 1997, geneticist Manfred Huhn and his team used DNA fingerprinting to trace einkorn wheat, the earliest domesticated strain, back to its exact origin. They pinned it to a specific mountain range called Karacadağ in what's now southeastern Turkey, around 9,500 years before the Common Era. This wasn't some vague process happening everywhere at once. This was one location, one narrow window of time, where a wild grass started a quiet conquest that would end up reshaping the entire trajectory of human history. Here's the catch, though. None of that happened because wheat sat there planning it. It's not conscious. Every version of the grass that happened to grow in a way humans found worth protecting simply got copied more, generation after generation, the same blind process that shapes any species until an entire population of wild grass became a machine for extracting human labor without a single neuron involved. Calling it a deal is just a shortcut for describing that selection pressure, not a claim that grass makes plans. Because the cost didn't stop at your body. It rewired how you lived with everyone around you, and this is where the story gets worse. Before Karacadağ, your ancestors moved freely through forests, grasslands, riverbanks, owning nothing they couldn't carry. After Karacadağ, you were tied to one patch of dirt. From there, 3 dominoes fell, one after another. First domino, property. You can't carry a wheat field with you, so you have to defend it exactly where it stands. For the first time in human history, land became something you could own, mark off, and pass down. Second domino, fences, and right behind fences, war. Fixed property means something worth fighting over. Archaeologists digging at Çatalhöyük, one of the largest Neolithic settlements ever found, also in Turkey, uncovered skull injuries from violence at rates far higher than anything seen in earlier hunter-gatherer groups. Territorial war, almost non-existent when humans were still nomadic, became a routine feature of settled life. Third domino, and it's the one people underestimate the most, disease. Living packed together, next to human waste, next to livestock, in settlements with essentially no sanitation, is a 5-star hotel for pathogens. A huge share of the infectious diseases humans have battled throughout history trace back to domesticated animals living shoulder to shoulder with people in exactly these farming villages. You traded the freedom of the open road for a permanent outbreak risk inside your own front door. There's a fourth cost hiding in the same domino, one that shows up somewhere you'd never think to look. Bioarchaeologist Clark Spencer Larson, studying skeletal remains across multiple early farming populations worldwide, documented a sharp jump in dental cavities and enamel defects right at the transition to agriculture, evidence preserved directly in teeth for 10,000 years, still readable today. Every early farmer's mouth was, quite literally, carrying physical proof of the deal their whole community had made. At this point, it sounds like a clean verdict. Wheat won, humans lost across every category that matters. But here's the detail that flips the entire scoreboard, and it comes down to how you define winning. If you measure success by how many copies of your genes get passed to the next generation, Homo sapiens won just as hard as wheat did. Before agriculture, the entire global population was a few million people scattered across continents. After agriculture, that number multiplied dozens, then hundreds of times over. Purely on evolutionary terms, the human genome has never had a better run. The problem is that success doesn't belong to you, one person living and dying inside one lifetime. It belongs to the species, a gene line stretching across thousands of generations, and you're one small link inside it. This was never a two-way contest with one clean winner. It's 2 separate scoreboards running at the same time, barely related to each other. Wheat won at the species level. Humanity also won at the species level. But you, with your curved spine, your shorter frame, your risk of dying from an outbreak in your own village, aren't that abstract species? You're the cost that got paid, so the species level number could look that good. Wheat never had to negotiate against a body that could feel pain, or a lifespan that could run out. It just had to outcopy itself. You did have a body. You did have one lifespan. And the scoreboard that actually mattered to your opponent was one you never even got to see. So go back to that patch of dirt 10,000 years ago, kneeling in front of a plant that never knew you existed. That contract never actually ended. Right now, wheat is planted across a bigger stretch of the planet than at any point in its entire history. Every slice of bread you eat, every bowl of noodles you finish, is you unconsciously re-signing the exact same deal your ancestors signed at Karacadağ. So the real question was never who won that bargain, wheat or humanity. That's the wrong file to be pulling because neither side of it is actually you. Here's the real one. Right now, in your own life, what contract are you quietly re-signing? Where the thing that benefits isn't you at all, it's some system a whole lot bigger than you.